All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome. Another day, another beautiful night here in Miami. And this Sunday night, I decided to go ahead and make a little trip over here to beautiful South Beach. Over there, we have the crazy partying, even on a Sunday, because Miami, that's what they do. And also, I came here a little bit more to the calmer side of things, so I can go ahead and deliver a very important message for you tonight. And the message has to do with the most important and the hardest disciplines of them all. And that is the discipline of accepting responsibility for your life. Now, before I crack into the video, I want to go ahead and open up the discussion with two quotes. That one I heard today, the other one I've been hearing recently, and it really emphasizes the importance of what it means to have a habit ingrained and how that can affect your life for the positive or the negative, right? So let me go ahead and start. So this one is by John Paul Getty, famous businessman, and he says, the individual who wants to reach the top in business must appreciate the might of the force of habit and must understand that practices are what create habits. He must be quick to break those habits that can break him and hasten to adopt those practices. I'll go back. And hasten, bam, 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 fast, to adopt those practices that will become the habits that help him achieve the success he desires. So what does that mean? Well, that means basically that, as we all know, habits are what constitute, what makes up your character eventually. So there's that beautiful quote that says, be careful of your thoughts because they become your actions. Be careful of your actions because then they become your character. Be careful of your character because that becomes your destiny. Correct? So I might have paraphrased a little bit there, but basically that's the gist. And another quote which I like a lot, this one is by Warren Buffett, and he says, the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. Damn, when I heard that, I was like, that's powerful. It's very powerful. So, oh, look at that. What a coincidence. I was about to grab this cap and it just falls off this place. And what does this mean? Well, maybe you have seen me wearing this beautiful cap that I have here, and that's the 10X. So what is 10X? 10X is something that I strive for. It's something that I'm striving to make a habit. So for example, Sunday night, somebody will call me crazy. It's like, what are you doing? Like driving to Miami? Like you have work tomorrow? You have to wake up at 5 in the morning, go to the gym? Like, are you crazy? And I'm like, well, if I'm gonna go ahead and achieve things that are beyond most people's wildest dreams, for example, a dream of mine is become the president of Ecuador. Now, I just dropped that, idea into your brain, and you're like, what? This guy is even more crazy than what I thought he was. Well, I really believe that I'm going to become the president of Ecuador one day. As crazy as that sounds, right? That is actually my desire to go ahead. I've been doing self-development for the past 5-6 years. I will go ahead and make another video of why exactly that happened and how it has led me to this position where I am more of a grounded, centered, unafraid, unapologetic individual, and who takes sort of these actions that are not normal per se, but which will inevitably lead me to a place that is just beyond my wildest dreams. So when I mentioned becoming the president of Ecuador, what I want to say is that for whatever reason, since I was a kid, I always had the idea of becoming the president of Ecuador. That's the country that I was born in. I'm Ecuadorian American. And, you know, once you have that kind of like calling in your heart, that something that you know that you want to do, you just have to follow it, right? It's like, I'm either going to do it or I'm either going to die in my attempts of doing it and just complete failure, right? We'll see what happens. So follow me in my journey. Anyways, what I was saying is basically taking these 10x actions. 10x basically is a way of living. 10x basically means setting your goals 10 times higher than what you are thinking about doing. So if this year you're like, you know what, I want to go ahead and make a $50,000, because making $50,000 is attainable now in this day and age, then you don't feel compelled to be like, oh, I'm gonna make $50,000. But if you're like, this year I'm gonna make $500,000, $5 million, you know, like literally you're like, okay, this year I'm gonna go for making $1 million. I don't care, 10x, right? With that, it has a twofold effect. So the first effect is that now you have a goal that you're like, holy shit, $10 million, you know, like $5 million, let's go. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to achieve it, but you're gonna have to also take 10 times the amount of action to get to that point, right? And what that basically means is that you're following the nice little quote of shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you will land among the stars. That's the whole gist of it, right? And 10x also comes hand in hand with this, right? You cannot go 10x, and you can't go 10x and basically be that, right? You cannot be a little bitch. Sorry if I'm offending you, some of you guys right now, but that's basically what I've been living recently, and that's kind of like going full round circle. What I want to talk about right now is the 10x. So we got some friendly people in here just walking around in Miami. It's always like this. And now going back full circle to the topic of today is the topic of the hardest skill, but the most essential skill that you're gonna be forced to implement if you want to break out of your circumstances right now. So what are your circumstances right now? Well, very simple. Look around, right? Are you driving a shitty car? Do you have a job you hate? Do you have a partner that just is annoying? Well, you have created these circumstances. It's as simple as that. It's not pointing fingers to anybody. It's literally pointing the finger to you. It's like, this is what I have created. So some days I wake up, you know, I've had a rough week at work, and first of all, before I go ahead and say anything, right, like, I've made so many mistakes in my life. Some of you more personal, close to me, you guys know all the kinds of mistakes that I've made in my life, and that's why I counterbalance that, you know, I would say more unorganized of my life with taking massive action to achieve some crazy dreams. And what I wanted to say is that yeah, you know, I'm just in my room and I see that my room is just like a complete mess. Like Hiroshima went off, bomb went off in my room, and I'm like, what happened, right? And then my bills are about to be late. You know, like today I had to call my my car bill, and I was like, hey, listen, man, my money is not coming until the 15th, so I'm not gonna be able to make the payment, right? But if I had been smart in the first place and I had put the date for the 15th as opposed to the 13th when I'm tighter in money, then, you know, I wouldn't have to go through that pain. So I am the one responsible for that. So basically the whole lesson in here is that whatever you are looking in, whatever area you're looking in your life right now, then you have created that circumstance. Those circumstances, you have created them, right? And it's very, I would say, empowering and debilitating, because debilitating, you're like, holy shit, like I created this mess. And at the same time, you're like, okay, so if I created this mess and I'm accepting being an adult, I'm being responsible that I created this mess, right? Like I got somebody pregnant, I went to jail, I, thousands of dollars in debt, anything, whatever situation you might be going through. If you accept it completely, then that's empowering. You're like, okay, I did that, I did that, I did that. Now I'm able to grab all those things that I did wrong and boom, change them completely. So there's this book that I was listening to. It's called No Excuses by Brian Tracy. And in this book, what he says is, I'm going to read you a little bit about what I was listening to, just constantly. He says, your ability and willingness to discipline yourself to accept personal responsibility for your life is essential to your happiness, health, success, achievement, and personal leadership. And it's literally the hardest of all disciplines. Why is it the hardest of all disciplines? Well, let's get into that. It's the hardest of all disciplines because since we've been growing up in a society that makes life easy for you, right? We're not having to deal with saber-toothed tigers and famine, and because we have all these things given to us, which is fantastic, and we have to be glad to live in the first world. But in that beautiful gift that life has given you, there's also something very precarious and something that could be of danger to your life, which is that you're like, oh, life is taken care of for me, right? And stretch a little bit. So when you grow in this environment that everything has been taken care of for you, then add to that you have been growing with this sort of child mentality where everything has been given to you by your parents. You were paid to go to college, right, by your parents. A lot of people, including myself, my parents invested over $50,000 in me go to FSU, and those things are great, but it gets to a point that you have been given so much, you have been silver spoon, you've been silver spoon fed so much, right, that you feel that if anything bad happens to you, it's not your responsibility. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, wake up. It's your time to wake up, right? You are no longer a boy. You are no longer a baby. Grow up, right? Like all the shitty stuff that's happening in your life right now, and this is a message to myself as well, is a product of that conditioning, right? Maybe some bad parenting. It's not your fault. It is not your fault. I don't want you to feel bad, but I do want you to wake up and realize that you need to take charge of your life, take personal responsibility, and change these things once and for all. Make a commitment that if you're at a shitty job, find a better job. How do you do that? It's not so hard, right? You need to put yourself out there. So myself, coming in here and doing this, that I'm not, I would consider myself a newbie at this compared to other people, but more advanced than others. It's just a matter of really, bam, breaking the pattern that something that you don't want is like, bam, and going and doing something new, right? So that's basically what it is. And I'll give you a personal example of my life in order to find a job, some of the things that I did. And it has to do with this beautiful medium that I'm using here, the camera, right? Like, you can go ahead, shoot a video, show your personality, be vulnerable, tell who you are, tell your story, and then post it to the world. You can create millions of dollars like that, and that's exactly what I am intending to do through this, right? Of course, creating money, bringing value, and growing, enriching people's life, which is the goal of this this video, right? I could become a billionaire, it doesn't really matter. What I really want to do is express myself. What I really want to do is to change people's lives, enrich your life, get new ideas into your brain. So going back to the example, I know that I'm all over the place, but that's how my brain works. You're gonna go ahead, shoot a video, do this. Literally grab your camera, put it on top of a box, film yourself. Hey, how's it going? My name is Joey, my name is Carolina, my name is Stephanie, my name is whatever, Juan. Once you make the video, you're able to send it in a resume. That's what I did. You write your resume, which doesn't mean anything because most people are gonna read thousands of resumes, but if you put a link, your YouTube link to a video, then people are gonna definitely click that. So I went ahead, I did that, I put a video, you know, I put a link, and after a month, no, after 2 weeks, I had a job. After 2 weeks, I had like 150 views in my simple to do video on YouTube. It was very simple to do, but it exposed me. Grant Cardone, the creator of the 10X Rule, which is in a fantastic book, you should check it out. And he says that the problem with most businesses, the problem with most people is that they are just in obscurity. What he calls obscurity. People don't know who they are. It's like, how am I going to buy your products? How am I going to buy the food, the ideas, the video products, the ebooks, anything you're producing if you're still in obscurity, right? Like, how, man? Like, how am I going to buy your product if I don't know who you are? I'm paraphrasing exactly what he says. And that's an example for a job, right? That's an example of taking responsibility. You're like, I have this shitty job. I'm working as a security guard. I do not like what I do. And realize, I'm like, okay, what I want is to find a job in sales, right? Make a video. Hi, you know, my name is John. I love talking to people. I'm very personable. I have no fear in like putting myself in uncomfortable situations. To be 100% honest, I have no sales experience, but I'm confident in myself, so I know that I'm going to kill it. That would make a great video. You have the interview before the interview, is what I call it, right? So, again, why is it so hard to do it? Because it's not a habit, right? Getting yourself outside the comfort zone and putting yourself out in that situation is tough. You haven't created that link. You haven't created that chain that makes you want to go ahead and create that video, makes you want to go ahead and hit the gym, right? But once you've built the habit and the habit of taking personal responsibility, then you can go ahead and just create things that you would have never thought about creating. So another of the reasons, this one's a little more personal, and I think is going to speak true to a lot of people's hearts, is that a lot of us grew up in environments in which the parenting wasn't ideal. And that's not blaming to parents, that's not pointing fingers to parents, it's just the fact that they didn't know how to do it either. They were just figuring it out. So maybe they were just going through stress, they did not know how to be, you know, personal leaders, they had a lot of emotion issues, and then they withheld love, unconditional, from you. When you were a kid, you grew up in an environment where you were criticized a lot, right? Don't do this, don't do that, you're doing this wrong. You had a very controlling father, controlling mother, and that once you get to 18, 19 years of age and you have a clear grasp of what's going on in your brain, your emotions, or maybe you don't, right? Which is also a huge issue, is that you're unconsciously unaware of these things, is that you have this deep feeling inside of you that you're not enough. And that is like the biggest problem for most people in relationships, jobs, going for your dreams, is because you don't feel worthy of it. You don't feel worthy of pursuing that girl that you like so much. So you don't even attempt in texting her. You don't even attempt contacting her. Let's say that you don't feel as worthy as getting a better job, right? So you just keep going in the job that you've been doing right now, right? Maybe you don't go ahead and buy that thing that you really want to invest yourself in because you don't feel that you should spend that money, and you still have it hidden somewhere, right? Because deep down inside you don't feel that you're worth it. Now, so I've told you two of the main, I would say, biggest weights that's holding you down. The first one is that you don't feel like you're enough, right? And why that is? Well, because maybe you grew up in that, very critical environment in your house, and that led to you feeling that way. The second one is that you have been kind of like baby fed throughout your whole life. So now you're like, you complain about everything. It's crazy, right? The author Brian Tracy, he goes on to say that this can be taken up to such an extreme, and I've lived this myself, this mild form of insanity, as he calls it, that you will start blaming, because a victim, that's what they do. This is what I'm portraying here. A person who doesn't feel like he's enough, a person who has been spoon-fed all their life. Combination of that is that they just feel like a victim, and then they blame the outside world, they blame their circumstances, they don't take personal responsibility. So you can see how all these things that I'm just throwing out there link up, right? Personal responsibility, a lack of it, is created by an inability of creating this habit, which has been not formed through a feeling of not feeling like you are enough because of these circumstances of the environment and whatnot. Now, once you realize these things that have been holding you down, and you're like, okay, now I realize that, now I want to change it, you can go ahead and start taking charge of your life in every single area of your life. And going back to the blaming side of things, he says that you can go ahead and get to such a level of mild insanity that you will blame inanimate objects, right? So what does that mean? Let's say this camera starts just not working for whatever reason. I'm like, fucking camera, like, what's wrong? I paid $500 for you, right? Just so much anger inside of me, and then I start blaming the outside world, right? Or, for example, I grab this bottle, and I'm like, this fucking bottle's... Sorry. Getting mad. So, I could get mad at inanimate objects. If you're at that point, then you're like, come on, how silly could I be? Like, really, how silly could I be? I'm blaming inanimate objects, right? Now, I've talked to you about how this forms, what are some of the symptoms, what are some of the manifestations in life of this sort of disease, I would call it, that plagues humanity, plagues society, but it's not outerly it's not outerly visible, it's not explicit, but it's obviously manifested in your life. And the solution to that is that every single time that you feel that you are about to blame somebody, complain, blame, nag, anything, before you do that, you say, I'm responsible. You are responsible. I am responsible for this. Oh, but my boss is such a pain in the ass, oh, he's such a control freak. And every time I speak with him, like, we have a fight, right? Well, okay, he is who he is, but you are still responsible. If you would treat him nicely, if you would be more of an active listener, if you were more compassionate and actually heard what he has to say, then maybe he wouldn't flare up on you. Oh, my girlfriend's so crazy, man. Like, I cannot deal with this girl, right? Well, if you actually decide that you are responsible, first of all, for getting yourself in the relationship, second of all, because the man's emotional wavelength is very, very directly correlated to the emotions the woman is feeling in the relationship. in a book that I have, to jump in another aside, as I love to do so much here, David Data in The Way of the Superior Man, he says that a woman's emotional state is a direct representation, is a lagging indicator. That's the word that he uses. It's a lagging, that lags but catches up, is a lagging indicator of a man's emotional well-being. So if you're in a situation with a girl and she starts getting anxious, it's highly likely that you are the one who is making her anxious, right? Or maybe this relationship is very insecure. Well, look at yourself first. How is your behavior, how is your internal workings affecting the relationship, right? I think that's fascinating. But if you are a grounded, solid, confident individual and you're working towards becoming that person, once you're in any situation with a female, then she's going to feel that calmness in you. She's going to feel that vulnerability. It's strong vulnerability. A lot of people, I was speaking with this friend of mine, and I'm like, just be vulnerable to the camera. And she's like, I don't want to be vulnerable. That means being weak, right? Which is like a funny misconception. Vulnerable just means being yourself 100% and putting yourself out there without much regard of what people think of you. So if you're putting yourself out there in that way because you're coming from a place of calm and peaceness, then that's going to reflect on the relationship. So I've been talking to the relationship, I've been talking about the job, I've been talking about any situation really, social, economic, healthy. It has been of your creation. So to resume the whole message, go ahead and make a firm decision that from now on you will take control of your emotions, your thoughts, your actions, your character, your destiny. It all starts by taking that handle of the ship. Sorry, it's a second language. Basically just becoming the captain of your soul and steering the ship to wherever you want to go, right? You really need to make that decision, and you're going to fall off the track. I fall off the track every week. It's normal, but every time you get back on, right? You just get back on, you become more solid, more grounded, more happy, more fulfilled. And that's the whole point of this, is that once you start doing this more and more frequently, you just go like upward spiral. So with that being said, take responsibility of your life. Make a decision that you will take responsibility of your life. Examine your circumstances. Figure out which areas of your life do you want to change, and then just start taking massive 10x action. Okay? That being said, Sunday, December 12th, 2015. Hope you have a wonderful week. If you see this tonight, which I'm gonna upload it tonight, or you see this tomorrow, doesn't matter. Just keep it 10x, keep it real, and enjoy life for what it is, but take responsibility and make the best out of it. Cheers.